Well, you're ready for another exciting college football Saturday. Incredibly, we've already reached week 7 of the college football season. I can't believe it. Football season just goes by in the blink of an eye, especially college football season. Unfortunately, not doing as well as I'd like so far this season in my college football bets. 1-2 last week puts us at 6-6 on the year, dead 500. So we'd like to start turning a profit, and we're running out of weeks here. We're overdue for an undefeated week. Maybe this is the week. There are 3 games I like this week. Let's see if we can sweep them and win all 3. First game, maybe the best game of the day, the LSU Tigers hosting the South Carolina Gamecocks. These teams coming off of very different results last week. South Carolina, a huge home win over Georgia. LSU lost on the road to Florida. And it was really odd to see LSU lose in the way in which they lost. They were pushed around. They were out LSU'd, so to speak. In the second half of that game, Florida's defense looks like we picture LSU's defense looking. And the Gators were able to find some running lanes and really run the ball down LSU's throat. So that defense, especially that front 7, which is full of future NFL players, I'm sure they were challenged this week in practice after getting beaten up in the second half of that game. So I do expect an inspired effort from LSU this Saturday. Now, the Tigers, of course, is one of the toughest places in the country to play. Tiger Stadium, they've won 21 straight home games. South Carolina is 1-10 all-time versus LSU. Again, LSU is a 2.5-point favorite right now on BETDAQ in this game, 40.5 the total. And despite what I just said, despite the fact that LSU's won 21 straight home games, South Carolina is 1-10 all-time against LSU. LSU should be extremely motivated. I certainly understand the argument for LSU here, especially from a situational perspective. LSU looks like a good situational play. They need this game, okay? If they lose this game, they're all but done in the SEC West. South Carolina, meanwhile, if they lose this game, no big deal. They'd still be in first place in the SEC East. I mean, you don't want to say no big deal. Obviously, every loss really hurts you in college football. But if South Carolina were to win out after losing this game, they'd probably be in the same place they were if they went undefeated. A one-loss SEC champion who beats maybe Alabama in the SEC championship game, probably still going to the national title game. So this game, more crucial for LSU, seems to set up nicely for LSU. Seems to be a good situation, yet I am backing the South Carolina Gamecocks here. I like South Carolina plus 2.5. They're just a better team. I've seen both these teams play plenty now. Their defense is comparable. LSU might have a slightly better defense, especially on the back end, especially that secondary. Boy, South Carolina's defensive line. I mean, those guys, Jadeveon Clowney, Devin Taylor, those guys are unbelievable. They were doing it again last week against Georgia. And LSU has had big problems on the offensive line this year. How are they going to protect Zach Mettenberger? And Mettenberger is really one of the reasons that I don't like LSU in this game. Coming into the season, me, like a lot of other people, LSU has been suffering from poor quarterback play for a while now. Throughout the Jordan Jefferson, Jarrett Lee era, they were winning in spite of their quarterbacks. Zach Mettenberger was a 5-star recruit. He was at Georgia first, competing with Aaron Murray for the job there. Got in a little trouble off the field, ended up transferring to LSU. But a lot of us, myself included, it just goes to show you, we put too much stock in these recruiting rankings. I had never seen Zach Mettenberger throw a ball before this year, but I just assumed, because he was such a big recruit, because he'd been at Georgia, I assumed he was going to be better than what they were getting over the last couple of years from Jordan Jefferson and Jarrett Lee, and I just assumed wrong. Zach Mettenberger has looked horrible this year, not only last week. Every time I've seen him play, he does not appear at all comfortable in the pocket. Clearly has a strong arm, but holds on to the ball too long. Again, skittish in the pocket, and this South Carolina defensive line is about the last group in the world you want to go up against if you're not feeling comfortable in the pocket and if your offensive line is struggling. So I expect the South Carolina defensive line to harass Mettenberger. Now, I think Les Miles and the LSU coaching staff knows good and well that Mettenberger is going to have trouble in this game if he gets back and throws it too often. So I expect a conservative game plan for LSU for the most part. We've seen the way they've tried to win these games in the past. They try to out-tough you, out-muscle you, stop you on defense, and just run the ball down your throat on offense. I also expect a couple of trick plays from LSU and Les Miles in this situation. We've seen Les Miles in the past. Sometimes he'll do things to create offense, half-back passes and things of that nature, fake field goals. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple of things like that here, because LSU has been really bad on offense, and they have to create something. Because as good as their defense is, and I don't expect South Carolina to score 35 points like they did against Georgia last week, you can't expect them to completely shut down South Carolina either. The South Carolina offense is much better than the Florida offense LSU saw last week. They're better at nearly every position. Better at quarterback, better at running back, better at the wide receiver position. So the LSU is going to have their hands full. The defense is going to have their hands full. 40.5 the total in this game. That is kind of low. We do expect a low-scoring game here. Again, I don't expect South Carolina to be scoring 35, and I think the LSU offense is going to have trouble scoring, period. So I understand why LSU's a favorite here. Looks like an excellent situational spot for LSU, but I think the wrong team is an underdog here. I believe South Carolina is the better team, and I think they're going to go into Tiger Stadium and beat LSU on Sunday. Next game, Stanford at Notre Dame. Notre Dame currently listed as a 7.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, 44.5 the total. And if you're going to play on Stanford in this game, BETDAQ's a good place to do it because this line has fallen to 7 everywhere in Vegas. So not that many places anymore you can get Stanford plus 7.5. BETDAQ is one of those places, and I do like the Cardinal in this game. When I see these two teams, they're very similar. These teams like to run the ball. They have good physical front sevens on defense. Both of them questionable secondaries, and both of them have trouble passing the ball. So neither one of these teams is going to be able to attack the other's weakness, which is that secondary. When I see this game, 44.5 the total, that total sounds kind of high, and I'm not the only person who's thought that. This total opened at 49 in Vegas and has moved way down, a bunch of under money. Actually, most places in Vegas, this total has already gone down to 43.5. Again, 44.5 right now on BETDAQ. And the main reason I like Stanford in this game is because I just feel like it's too many points. Notre Dame is not good offensively. I don't care about last week, them scoring 41 on Miami. Miami is so bad on defense, one of the worst defenses in major college football. I've seen Miami play 3 times this year. They're almost mind-numbingly bad on defense. Notre Dame's 3 previous games, when they scored 13 against Michigan, 20 against Michigan State, 20 against Purdue, I think that's more realistic of what you're going to see out of this team against a good defense. And Stanford does have a good, solid defense. They gave some points up last week to Arizona, but aside from that game, even in their loss to Washington, that defense stepped up for a lot of the game. Good front seven for Stanford. I expect them to limit Notre Dame's running game, and really, the running game is what Notre Dame has. We know about the 2-quarterback system Brian Kelly's been using, bringing in veteran Tommy Rees off the bench to be the closer. I've watched Tommy Rees play football for the last couple of years. I don't have much faith in this guy at all. So bringing him into the game to generate offense really does nothing for me in terms of how I'm looking at this game, in my opinion, of what Notre Dame's going to do. So just think it's too many points here. I think people are riding Notre Dame. Obviously, hey, 41-3 over Miami last week. I guess it's a good time to ride Notre Dame. But I expect the Irish to be held to within 17 to 21 points here. And even though they might win the game, I expect a competitive, low-scoring game, and I like Stanford in the 7.5 points. The other game, the Red River Rivalry, that's pretty tough to say 2 or 3 times quickly. Oklahoma, a 3-point favorite over Texas right now on BETDAQ, 60.5 the total in this game. Both these teams have been a little disappointing so far this season. They've each lost a game apiece. Oklahoma, a bad loss to Kansas State, or at least a bad loss. The Sooners were favored in that game. A lot of people thought they were going to be able to take care of business against a Kansas State team that you would think is a little outmanned. Sure, certainly more future NFL players on Oklahoma's roster, that is, than there was on Kansas State roster. Kansas State was able to do their thing in that game, sort of run the ball right at Oklahoma. I do like the Sooners in this game, though. I like Oklahoma minus the 3 points. I'm really disturbed by watching Texas defense. Texas is really bad on defense this year. Now, I just don't understand it. Now, they're not Miami bad, but this is a defense that is full of 5-star recruits. I mean, if you follow college football recruiting at all, you go and you read down the names of this Texas defense, and you're like, oh yeah, wasn't this guy number 1 in his position, or wasn't this guy in the top 5 in his position in the country? And they all were. These guys were big-time recruits. They've really struggled to tackle this year. Watching them surrender 48 points to West Virginia last week, and I'm well aware West Virginia has a great offense. They put up points on anybody. But Texas, Texas has the athletes. Usually West Virginia plays teams that don't quite have the athletes to match up with that speed on the perimeter. Texas does have those athletes, and they were able to match up with that speed. They just weren't able to tackle the guys. I mean, those Texas defenders were just bouncing off of West Virginia players. That is 3 straight games now Texas allowed 30 or more points. West Virginia, Oklahoma State, that's one thing, but 3 games ago, allowing over 30 to Ole Miss. That is a little bit concerning. I would be concerned about that if I were a Texas fan. Now, Oklahoma's played better on defense this year, much better than Texas. They haven't allowed any more than 24 points in any of their games. Of course, they haven't played in the offenses like West Virginia. It's really been the Oklahoma offense has been a little disappointing this year. This was an experienced veteran unit led by quarterback Landry Jones, who seems like he's been there forever. But they haven't been able to get on track. Now, of course, they lost Ryan Broyles, Landry Jones' favorite wide receiver, but Broyles had injury problems throughout his collegiate career anyway, so they had a little experience playing without him, and they have a couple of good wide receivers out there now. Again, this Oklahoma offense, just as the Oklahoma defense will have some players who play on Sundays. So you expect them to be a little better. Maybe they woke up last week beating Texas Tech on the road by 3 touchdowns. Anyway, Oklahoma, Landry Jones has historically played pretty well in this game against Texas. I do like Oklahoma -3 in the Red River rivalry over Texas. Red River rivalry. I guess I should just stop trying to say that. So anyway, that's what I got. Those are my 3 games. 6-6 on the year. Let's see if we can't get above 500. I like South Carolina +2.5. I like Stanford +7.5. And I like Oklahoma -3. I wish you best of luck this weekend and whatever you decide to do, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests.